While many people on the left, Jew and non-Jew alike, say that President Trump is an anti-Semite, with some even comparing him to Hitler, it is important to highlight a true Nazism that exists today, that the left is not only silent about, but partners with. It is a cause whose goal is the destruction of the Jewish state of Israel, and it educates its children to murder Jews. I'm referring to the cause called Palestine. If that is not modern Nazism, then I don't know what is. It was clear as day that they never intended to make peace with Israel. From day one of the so-called peace process, called the Oslo Accords, signed on the White House lawn back in September 1993. Right before the White House ceremony, Palestinian Authority leader, then arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat, said on Radio Monte Carlo that the Oslo Accord was part of the Palestine Liberation Organization's 1974 phased plan for Israel's destruction. Then, in a speech in a mosque in Johannesburg, South Africa, in May 1994, Arafat stated, quote, "The jihad will continue. You have to understand our main battle is Jerusalem. You have to come and to fight a jihad to liberate Jerusalem, your precious shrine. No, it is not their capital. It is our capital." This agreement, the Oslo Accords, I'm not considering it more than the agreement which has been signed between our Prophet Muhammad and Quraysh. And you remember that the Caliph Omar had refused this agreement and considered it a despicable truce. But the same way Muhammad had accepted it, we are now accepting this peace effort. They treated it as a truce and then attacked and destroyed their enemies. And that's how they look at this peace accord. These are just a few of the hundreds of quotes from Palestinian leaders documented by the Israeli government, showing their constant incitement to destroy Israel and showing that they were never truly intent on peace. Yet the left has always ignored this. Nazism wasn't just the mass murder of Jews. That was just the culmination of their evil. Nazism was the delegitimization and dehumanization of Jews. Hitler did this by brainwashing German society via incitement in the education system and German state-owned media companies. President Trump does not do that, yet he is labeled Hitler? But do you know who does do that today? The Palestinian Authority. They've been doing it for decades. An organization that the global and Jewish left has cozied up to. They blame, the left blames Israel for the absence of peace, but they are silent about the Nazism that is inherent in the cause called Palestine. Let's break this down. In a recent article by journalist Melanie Phillips back in September, titled "The West's Blind Eye to Palestinian Incitement," Melanie Phillips writes the following. Western supporters refuse to acknowledge the murderous incitement against both Israel and the Jewish people that routinely emanates from the supposedly moderate Palestinian Authority. They don't just ignore its repeated calls for Israel's destruction and support for the murder of Israelis. They also ignore the grotesque anti-Semitism that pours out of Palestinian Authority-backed preachers, publications, and TV. As painstakingly documented by Palestinian Media Watch and the Middle East Media Research Institute, the Palestinian Authority presents the Jews as possessing inherently evil traits. It regularly describes them as treacherous, corrupt, allied with the devil, and the descendants of apes and pigs. Delegitimization, dehumanization. It has claimed Jews are thirsty for blood to please their God against the Gentiles and crave pockets full of money, that the Jews were forced out of Egypt in the past because of the threat that their evil nature posed to Europeans, that these Jewish traits and ways of behavior constitute a danger to all of humanity, and so on and so on. Those are all quotes from their textbooks. And Melanie continues, the Palestinian supporters who are so quick to damn any Western figure suspected of the slightest historic connection with far-right movements also totally ignore the history of Palestinian Nazism. In the 1930s, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, made a pact with the Nazis and turned the Palestinian Arabs into Hitler's army in the Middle East. More than that, as detailed by Barry Rubin and Wolfgang Schwanitz in their book, Nazis, Islamists, and the Making of the Modern Middle East, al-Husseini was no less committed than Hitler to the utter extermination of the Jews. He pledged to achieve that internal aim throughout the Middle East and was highly influential in encouraging Hitler to adopt the specific extermination strategy of the final solution. This still matters today. While the Palestinians in general shouldn't be tarred with the Nazi brush, al-Husseini is revered and extolled by the Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas, a Holocaust denier who openly draws on the former Grand Mufti for inspiration. So why are Western progressives so attached to the Palestinian cause that they ignore such evidence of its noxious characteristics? That was Melanie Phillips. But that's not all. Incitement against Jews in their school books is not a new issue. Back in 2001, the European Union had a commission looking into the Palestinian Authority textbooks. In an article in Politico from July 2001 titled "Palestinian Books Remind Me of Nazis," says German MEP. He said, "These school books remind me of those published under the Nazi regime in 1930s Germany. They contain terrible anti-Jewish racism, not just in history books, but also in grammar and math books." End quote. A more recent study from last year was reported on by the Jerusalem Post in an article titled "Palestinian Textbooks Full of Incitement Study Finds." The findings convey a horrific reality where violent acts, hatred, and even martyrdom are not only justified, but encouraged. The study found that all textbooks in social studies, history, Arabic, and national education for grades 2 to 12 contained problematic content defined by impact as violence or incitement to violence, hatred of the other, and radical, inappropriate, or disturbing content. The study concludes that is a strategic choice made by the Palestinian Ministry of Education to radicalize whole generations of young Palestinians, to encourage them to commit violence, endanger themselves, and to reject peace with Israel. End quote. This is Nazism. Palestine, the cause, is Nazism. That the left and the Jewish left have been silent about this actual, real Nazism, and instead they castigate Israel for not making peace with the Palestinian Authority, and they call Trump a Nazi and an anti-Semite. Now, I don't expect to impact those on the left that believe these lies, but I do hope that true liberals wake up to this reality and begin to see the moral bankruptcy on the left.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.